Hi, this is Misha.
And this is Jay.
And this is our first Q&A video brought to you by our Patreon subscribers. If you pay $1 or more, but $1 a month, you're very welcome to leave us some questions. And once in a while, every month or two, we'll get together and do our best to BS our way through some answers for you. Oh, and by the way, guys, in future, let us know when you leave your question if you'd like to be acknowledged by your first name or a username or even a business name, as long as it's not too heavy on the advertising.
Sure. First question is from SH. How do you feel about buying used rifles online?
Honestly, probably better than new a lot of the time. What I've run into with new guns, a lot of people will sell guns as quote-unquote new that really aren't new. Sometimes there'll be guns that sit on the rack at a gun shop for months or even years, and hundreds, thousands of people handle them. They've been dropped. A lot of times they look rougher than a lot of used guns. At the same time, what's new? I see a lot of people sell a gun as new, yet it's been transferred on a 4473 and brought home. So to them, new just means it's unfired. That's kind of like taking a car off the lot and then saying it's a new car because I never put a mile on it. It doesn't work that way. So at least with a used gun, it's kind of honest. Now that said, use common sense. I mean, something like an AR, you know what to ask for, AKs. I usually ask if corrosive ammo has been fired through it, things like that. If all the parts work as they should. If it's old mill SERP, I usually ask to check the firing pin or if it's been sporterized in any way. But generally speaking, if you just use some common sense, you can get some great deals on used guns online, and at least they're honest, they're used.
Right. Yeah, and I think a lot of times with used guns, there's going to be a lot more pictures and things.
True,
like on
yeah.
like on a gunbroker auction or whatever it happens to be. So you typically, unless there's just something really hidden, you typically kind of know what you're getting into. And a lot of guns, especially in the AK and AR world, if there is something that fails on the outset, a lot of times it can be repaired with the part swap, but not always. So.
Yeah, that's a good point, because if it's an AR, AK, even if there's something minor wrong with it, you can fix it. But if it's a rare gun, yeah, just be smart about it. And for example, at my store, for a new gun, we'll do 4, maybe 8 photos. But for a used gun, usually a minimum of 12, and that's usually for a pistol like a Glock or a Wasser. For any older Milsurp gun, it's usually 20, 25, and I see some people put up 100.
Right. Adam asks, what is the most challenging aspect of being a blind gun owner? I am legally blind myself, but love collecting and shooting historical firearms and hunting. Your channel really inspired me to pursue my passion. Thanks, Adam.
The most challenging part, driving myself to the gun range. No, I really do appreciate the question. And, to be honest, it's not something I think about much. I grew up in the South, had a gun put in my hands before kindergarten. Granted, it was a .22. I mean, we're crazy, but we're not insane here. Although my dad did give me $1,000 to shoot when I was 6. And so my family, to their credit, didn't really treat me any differently growing up. So that was part of it. It didn't really... Obviously, I can't shoot for accuracy. I get a lot of people asking me about shooting that. I really mostly shoot for fun, for the feel of the thing, to tell people if it's reliable, durable. Accuracy, I've thought about later in life when I have more time and money, because there's equipment I can buy. But honestly, the most challenging part would probably have more to do with relating to selling guns. It would be parts of condition. Bore condition is obviously something I have no way to judge. And finish condition is tricky. Sometimes I can easily feel rust. But sometimes if it's very even wear on glossy bluing, it's really hard for me to tell if it's nice bluing there or if it's just silver. Wood I'm actually very good at. So yeah, I would say judging certain aspects of condition are the most difficult. And of course, markings on guns are completely foreign to me. But yeah, I really appreciate it, your support, and I'm not terribly active in the blind community. I wish I was more so, but at the end of the day, I'm just so tired. Maybe one day I can get more involved in it. If there's anything I can do for anyone, or if there's anything you'd like me to help do, please feel free to email me. I'd be more than happy to do anything I can to help out, because we've all got a pretty tough road to hoe. It's not easy.
Darren asks, in your opinion... No, hold on one second. Let me preface this by saying, we are not lawyers, and we do not work for the government, so do not take anything that we say as legal advice. Darren asks, in your opinion, is it a quote-unquote big deal for one's personal firearms to be 922R compliant? I have many AK-type rifles, and like most AK guys, I like my rifles to be as authentic as possible. I'm asking about personal non-FFL firearms collection that is not for sale. Would the government ever actually come after an individual for stuff like that?
Yes. In fact, I heard they're going to reopen Alcatraz and possibly reinstate the death penalty in California because of it. Being serious, the answer, you have to be kind of careful. Obviously, 922R is part of a law. Actually, it's kind of part of an order, but no one's saying break the law.
Right.
However, it has been a thing since 1990, and it's been a known thing since about the late 90s. In all those years, over 25 years, not only has there not been anyone convicted and punished for a 922R violation, there hasn't even been someone brought to court. And the reason is simple. It's an unenforceable law. How do you know where a part is made and can prove it in a court of law? Furthermore, how do you define assembly manufacturing? A lot of internet lawyers will say one thing, say another, but the truth of the matter is so many aspects of that law are ill-defined. In fact, I'll point out this, it says handguards. Well, on an AK, what's a handguard? If I had a US lower but a foreign upper, or vice versa, what does that count as? Do I need both? Just one? It's so ill-defined. I've seen some guns, like the Benelli M4, we're not sure if they need one part, 4 or 5. No one's ever said. Here's the simple fact, and this is the reality. This isn't legal online armchair lawyering. Why do you want an armchair lawyer anyway? That's boring. Commando, I get. I've spoken directly with the ATF on occasion, not specifically calling them up and asking, but it came up in conversation, and a couple of manufacturer friends have as well. I've had about 4 answers. Here are some. What the hell are you talking about? Another one would be, don't waste my time with silly questions. Another one was, you can if you want to, with a shrug. That was to Mark. When we were asking about converting pistols to carbines, honestly didn't give a rat's. And the most recent one from late last year was probably the most in-depth because it was really the most professionally relevant. The way the ATF tends to look at 922R, the like 3 agents in the whole thing that even know what it is, they apply it to manufacturers because this is the only way they can even halfway enforce it. When someone manufactures or sells a firearm, it needs to have the requisite number of parts. If it doesn't, nothing's probably going to happen. At worst, that individual might lose their import license or just good graces with the ATF. I don't think anyone's ever mentioned jail time because, again, you would have to go to court, and how do you do that? But they apply it to manufacturers. So I would say, if you're going to sell a gun out of your personal collection, drop some parts in. It's easy peasy, especially with AKs. I know you like them. Trigger group, US mag, or trigger group, pistol grip, muzzle device, whatever. Throw them on, you're safe. What you do in the privacy of your own home is your own business. If you're to the point where agents are spying on you or in your home and stripping your guns apart, checking where parts were made, son, you done fucked up. You're already so much in trouble they're just looking for anything extra to put icing on that cake. So my advice is, be a law-abiding citizen, and this is something that should really never be an issue. Sorry that was long, guys, but this is something that has come up a lot and it needed to be addressed.
I wonder how many Chinese AR-15s there are floating around.
We've talked about that. All these cheap ARs, most of their parts are actually from China and Taiwan. It'd be funny if a lot of the cheap ARs technically aren't 922R compliant.
I would bet that there probably are quite a few of these lower parts kits and stuff that are just 100% made.
Yeah, I bet like your lower and your barrel are U.S. made, and that might be about it in some of the cheap guns.
Yep.
So there you go. And I know of at least a few guns from very big manufacturer importers, special edition guns that did not have enough parts. Never anything said about them. I mean, they had a few, but they were a part or two short.
Okay.
So don't worry. Be happy. Enjoy your great guns. And for the love of God, online forums, just quit mentioning this. I think if 922R were just kind of kept on the down low, people would forget about it in a couple of years. That's enough of that, I guess.
John asks, I have some Saiga rifles that were imported by RWC just before the ban. I was wondering if you might know the reason for the change from Arsenal to RWC.
Well, Arsenal didn't change to RWC. Arsenal changed to FIME. However, neither company over in Las Vegas had an exclusive agreement with Izhmash. Izhmash is a huge factory. So they've had many importers over the years, sometimes 2 or 3 at a time. You saw the same thing with some of the Molot Vepr 12s. So there wasn't really a change. It's just two different. Arsenal mostly specialized in the SGL series, and that was exclusive to them. But for the regular Saigas and other variations, you had lots of other people.
Gotcha. Casen asks, if in the future the Sporting Purposes clause of the 1968 GCA is removed or the GCA repealed, which firearms would you be most excited about being allowed to be imported?
Sorry, folks, needed some vodka. Not really, it's water. I would love to see 68 go away because I'm a collector. Sure, I like American military, but American stuff is pretty homogenous. So most stuff comes from overseas. Here's the problem. When you say the 68 thing goes away, that would still leave the once a machine gun, always a machine gun in place. That was passed or became policy in 64. So let's say the once a machine gun, always a machine gun thing still sticks. So we can't just say convert a G3 rifle and bring it over.
Right.
So that means we're basically limited to new manufactured guns. And the problem there is a lot of those factories have closed over the years. Like Finland, both Valmet and Seiko are gone. In Hungary, FEG no longer does guns. Russia and China have their own sanctions. I mean, stuff could come in, but the truth of the matter is most things that are made, we found ways to get semi-auto versions over, like the 805 Bren, the ARX 100, the Galil Ace, and so on. Mm-hmm. The only difference is they have a handful of U.S. parts, or they're assembled here to get around. I'll tell you the foreign guns I'd love to have semi-autos of, so if they could be possible. I'd love to have an L85, because I want to make my AUG look better, and I have a British collection that I like. I also would love to have a FAMAS because it looks like a trumpet, and I also have quite a French collection. And another one I would say would be a G36. We have a very old video with one, but someone offered me way too much money about 3 years ago, right after we moved, and needed the money more than the guns, so it found the new home. But I'd love to see an actual authentic G36. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I think, for me, just making imports in general easier to get so that people don't have to jump through as many hoops. Getting away from sporting clauses and single stack magwells and magwells having to be milled out and, bayonet lugs being cut off and threads have to be done in the U.S. Things like barrel bands and all that. We'd see basically a reduction in cost that way. to where
Oh,
we can
sure,
actually
yeah.
get, you know, quality mil-spec firearms in the country.
And that's more, kind of what he's asking, because all of that stuff is an outgrowth of the 68 sporting thing, so, yeah.
So that to me wouldn't be a specific firearm, I would say, but just making the firearms that we have less of a headache to try to get.
Are you thinking about Polish stuff right now?
I'm particularly thinking about
I could tell. Yeah, they're one of the few other AK manufacturers.
Actually, you know what? That's a good segue right into this next question.
Great.
Cav asks, any idea on the status of firearms manufacturing in Poland? Besides what you've mentioned in the videos so far, but maybe some clarification or summarization. What companies and what factories are making what kind of rules, if any, about not mixing export and mill sales, and anything you know on them bringing the MSBS in or making them in the U.S.?
Well, we're going to do more of a, we did a teaser video before we went on break in February about the new FB product line coming over. And we're going to do another video kind of reviewing some of the FB stuff and also talking about the history. So I don't want to give too much away right now. But, we have WBP that is nominally, it's a private, family-run business, and they mostly cater to the commercial market. They do have quite a few overseas contracts in the Middle East and Africa. They also do supply some parts and things to the Polish military. So they're a contractor, but they are privately owned. Pioneer Arms exists. And then, of course, we have FB-Radom, which, I'm not exactly sure technically its status because of modern business practices. In some aspects it is private, but in a lot of other aspects it's owned by the Polish government, and thus any kind of Polish military orders take precedent. It's also fulfilling that Nigerian contract for the Beryl M762, so it's obviously doing export for other military customers. As of now, there's no real restrictions on mixing military and commercial that I'm aware of, but military orders take precedent. So that's pretty much where we're at with those. Sorry, I don't really know a lot of the ins and outs because I don't speak Polish, and you get into all that. And, for example, whenever a government changes in Poland, policies can change. So what I'm saying now could very well not be true a year later. But for now, I would say the two big ones to think of are FB-Radom and WBP. Yeah.
And we've been really happy so far with what we've seen out of WBP. Mm-hmm. And we've had the recent Arms of America announcement where they've got, Radom parts coming in. So we have options, and hopefully those options will improve over time.
We will see.
Matthew asks, I am relatively new to collecting milsurps, and I've often heard the advice of buying while the guns are still being imported. While this makes sense, I have had trouble finding out for how long a certain gun will likely be imported for. There are dozens of guns I want to buy, but I prioritize guns that are most likely to spike in price in the near future. I was fortunate to get a K31 cheap a year ago, and now they are going for nearly double what I paid. How do I tell what guns are most likely to shoot up in price or stop being imported in the near future? And also, what milsurps or police trade-ins are likely to have a stable price for the foreseeable future?
Honestly, and I'm sure you know this, no one really knows. For example, how long something's going to come in is impossible to know. The only two things you can look at, how long has it already been coming in, and how many were originally made. But then you get into laws and the changing things. You never know. Stuff that I would just give the advice that if there's something that's coming in, something especially surplus, buy it when you can, because rarely are they ever any cheaper than when they're currently in their import cycle. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. And if you can, I know this sounds goofy, but if you can afford to buy 2 or 3 of them, buy 2 or 3, pick your favorite, wait till that import wave is over, because sometimes they go through little gaps of a few months, and then sell the 2 that you didn't like as much for a small profit, or trade them off for something else, because again, they're only going to go up. And I say this because we're talking milsurp, which you can kind of speculate in, whereas you can't other guns. I mean, some of these guns are $200-300.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you can actually look at some of this, some evidential information through like the Romanian firearms. Because if you look at like the Draco, a lot of times you can get into a Draco, you'll start seeing them pop up on a lot of different websites, and they're anywhere from, you know, $450, $550, $650, somewhere in those lines, and then suddenly you won't see them on a lot of websites anymore. And then you'll see them on Gunbroker for $750, $850.
And if something is starting to get popular, which is related to that, buy it. Because once there's a big, like, military arms channel or Rob Ski or Forgotten Weapons does a video, it's going to sell out. So don't try to buy when something is... Don't follow the cool kids and buy what's not popular at the time.
When you start seeing stuff pop up on a whole bunch of different websites... Generally speaking, that's a good time to buy it. And so when you're only able to find it on auction sites or on classifieds, that you're probably going to have a harder time getting into it at the price that you want to get into it at.
And I'm going to say this, and I'm not running them down as a company. I have bought from them. You know, I've got that PX4 pistol. I got a BM59. But if you see an old bolt-action gun at Classic Firearms, please check the price elsewhere first. Lately, they've been not at market value for things like their Swedish Mausers and Enfields and stuff. Yeah. I'm not saying anything about the company, but they tend to run on the very high end. But no, I encourage military collecting while it's still available, because guys, it's going to go away. People thought for years the Mosins would never dry up. Now they're dried up. Right. And now they went from being $100, $150 to $300 up.
Yep.
But I think it's a really good thing, but you just kind of, if you want something, just try to save up as quick as you can to buy it. You asked finally about what will be more stable, the American stuff.
Yep.
You know, Smith & Wesson revolvers will pretty much always be more or less available. And also, guns make kind of a jump, and the M1 Garand has done it. For a long time, they were $400, $500 when I was young. Now they jumped up to $1,000 or so, but they seem to be hanging out there. So once a gun's kind of already made that jump from import to just post-import, they tend to be relatively stable.
Right.
So,
one thing that's out right now, this is we're talking February 2018, is these Colt 6520s that are on CD in it for $799, and we've actually got one. This is a 6320 because it's got the A1, but the only difference is the sights. So, like these are one thing that. Retro ARs are super popular right now.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody wanted these because they had a fixed carry handle, and nobody wants a fixed carry handle. Everybody wanted rails just a few years ago. Now the retro stuff, you look at the Brownells retro line that just came out, the Colt that came out a while ago, and then the, I'm blanking on the name, the Troy.
Yeah, funnily enough, those are all, the Troy and the Brownells are in the 12 to 13 range, whereas these are $800. Yeah, originals are cheaper than the...
So there are things like that where you see where a wave comes out of something and the price seems too good to be true, and like that's the time to kind of snap those things up, because retro ARs are hot right now. These guns are somewhat devalued because, again, people didn't want retros not too long ago, and now retros are sort of the hip thing to get into. And
I've actually found a lot of really good deals at CDN. They're an interesting company because it seems like when they only have one or two of something, it's really high. But when they have a large number, that's where I got that PS90 for like $800 and the FS2000 for $1,400 with the optics. So, you know, they're a good place to check on. I'm not saying always buy, but sometimes they have really good deals on especially American stuff.
And you can get on mailing lists. I mean, obviously.
Oh, sure, I do, yeah.
It's hard to almost not get emails from some of these companies, but you can find out what they've got new coming in and what's on sale, and with imports, if it seems like it's a good deal, go ahead and buy it, because chances are it's not going to be around for that price for very long.
And speaking of imports too, it's not just guns. Another one we brought out here is my Hungarian AKM63. It was just out because we were refinishing the stock on it. But parts kits, don't forget about parts, accessories, mags, any of that stuff. If it's coming in and looks like a great price and you're interested, grab it.
There are plenty of people that look back at a lot of guns and go, man, I wish I'd have bought a ton of those whenever they were at X price. And I mean, that's no different now with anything else, really. Nope. I mean, except for Milsurp. I mean, Milsurp is at its lowest price right now. You know what I mean? Like it's not going to be. It's not like milsurp is ever going to decrease in value.
Yeah, because there's not really a source of overseas. You know, there were times in the past, for example, when the communist bloc failed, that prices did go down because all those guns were released from a warehouse in East Europe. But that's over. I mean, we might see we might see that big batch of M1 Grands come over from East Asia that might lower the value on the Grand a bit. But other than that, in those 1911s, the CMP keeps teasing us with, I can't think of any other large import globs that are on the horizon.
You know, one thing I think I'm seeing people turn their nose up a lot at is those is the Tokarev pistols, the Yugo.
Yeah, the M57. Yeah.
A lot of people aren't really much on those. I think I'm still seeing them for like $199, and that's pretty cheap for any gun.
And they're very well made. There is a Zastava.
Yeah. So I mean, things like that, and look at, like we mentioned.
Yeah, there's some good deals in pistols.
Who are we seeing those through mostly right now?
You know, Classic Firearms, I think, had some. See, I don't hate them, guys. I was just giving you a thing, check them out. But they had them. Sometimes you can find them at J&G or Centerfire.
Is the one I'm thinking of.
Okay, and then Centerfire sometimes has that stuff. Atlantic sometimes carries some surplus, but not as much. They do more parts. I see a lot of surplus parts.
Like those types of Makarovs, Tokarevs, things like that.
Yeah, there are more pistols because we're moving into the surplus era where the guns were already full auto, so we can't import those. But the handguns they were issuing in the 50s, 60s, 70s are still legal. And the Stars, those Star Model Bs, like I got off your buddy, yeah, those were a good buy for a long time.
So, I mean, the Polish P64s are still cheap, and I have one that's my primary carry gun. And
he changed the spring out.
I changed the spring out. I did change the trigger spring, and I changed the recoil spring out. But it's been 100%. I've probably shot 300 rounds through it so far, and it's been 100% reliable.
Oh yeah, they're very reliable.
These guns are generally overbuilt for military and police use. So stuff like that is probably good to get into now.
I will give this disclaimer. Whenever you buy a surplus gun, and I had a lot of friends that did back at college because that's what we could afford. They were really cheap and they couldn't afford for a carry or a home defense. Please have a gunsmith who knows what he's doing check it out, because these are old used guns. They may have broken or worn parts that could lead to I've had, for example, double taps and stuff that comes out of some of the old guns. So if you get one, I'm not saying don't use it, I'm just saying have it looked over first.
Sure.
And also get all the Cosmo out.
Right. Yeah, that's going to be a big thing.
Especially those Makarovs, because it gets in the firing pin and bleh.
So this question is actually somewhat linked to this. Micah asks, why is the N-PAP fixed stock getting hard to find online? The N-PAP-DF, which I believe is the underfolder, seems plentiful.
People tend to go for fixed stocks as a general rule. Underfolders have always been a specialty gun. The fixed stock has a scope rail, the underfolder does not. But I think above all, it's shooting comfort. Whereas the underfolding stock does have the cool factor, it's not as comfortable to shoot. And I think most people just kind of default. Plus, you do have more people in certain states that can't have underfolders, so there's a little larger market.
Do you feel like the Yugos are getting harder to find in general?
I feel like in 2018, they very much could be very hard to find. I have nothing confirmed I can talk about, but let's just say that Century has a lot of AK lines, and some of them seem very redundant to them. And the N-PAP has not been selling as well as, say, the Wasser or even the RAS 47. So if they were to cut a line, guess which one it would probably be.
And I have a feeling that the N-PAPs have been crapped on. Obviously, again, comparing it to a certain Polish AK that we looked at not too long ago, the problems with the N-PAP seem small by comparison.
And even the gentleman who the people often quote for those problems said on multiple forum posts, get an N-PAP. So he's still a fan of them.
N-PAPs are available for the most part, and they're not excessively cheap or expensive, and they are foreign made, and they're AKs, and they're right now they're a proven platform.
They've been out for 5 years now, and there's no videos of catastrophic explosions, failures, anything on YouTube. So they're safe to fire. I feel very confident in saying they are safe to fire.
Do you remember how crappy Wassers used to be in everybody's mind. Terrible.
Yeah, I went through all that.
Until you couldn't get them anymore. I think in 2012 was really whenever you started to see them completely dry up.
When the Obama panic happened in 08, it started and it really culminated with his re-election in 12, and then of course the Sandy Hook. Yeah.
And those guns became impossible to find, and then they became the best AK ever, and now people talk about them in the same breath that they talk about, Chinese guns, which are also really difficult to get a hold of and find. So,
and I will point out, there have been more this year. There's been more issue with the Wasser than the N-PAP. It's not a major one, but the mag catches weren't riveted properly in some, so they're falling out. Easy fix, but not happening with the N-PAP that I've heard of.
But the point being is, if an N-PAP line were to dry up for whatever reason, I have a feeling that they would also be considered legendary. Man, do you remember that when we could just get foreign-built AKs?
The Yugos, they're built like tanks. They've got the heavy barrels.
Right. These Yugos that we could find everywhere that are growing on trees, and they were the best AK ever, and now we're just stuck with RAS 47s and C39s and whatever else. So all I'm saying is hindsight is 20/20 on a lot of these types of imports. So
back to the milsurp question.
Yep. So get it while you can get it.
And the N-PAPs right now, if you can find them, are still a little cheaper than the Wassers.
Yep. That's all the questions that we've got.
And not bad for the first start. Like I said, this was our first go at a Q&A, so we're kind of winging it here. Feel free to please leave suggestions. We want to get better at this, and please leave questions, or we'll do our best to get to them as quick as we can. We can't always meet up. We don't live across the street from each other, so it might take us a few weeks or a month or two, but we'll get to you, we promise.
If you're interested in asking some questions and having them read in this type of forum, like we mentioned before, the Patreon, these Q&As are open to all Patreon contributors regardless of the level, so even down to $1 is enough to get these read. And if you would prefer that we don't read your name, let us know. Leave your
just whatever you want. Any little things you want to plug in, if it's reasonable, we'll meet that request. And we have $5 and up benefits and $10 and up benefits too. So again, just go over and be interested. And even if you can't be a Patreon, that's awesome. Sure. We do try to get to comments, especially on the newer videos, best we can, and we just appreciate any support we can get whatsoever.
Yep. Please like the videos that we've gotten and subscribe to us. We definitely have been measuring the amount of success we have with just basically by our subscriber count, because YouTube does absolutely nothing to promote our channel. They don't make a penny off of us.
Yeah, we never have gone for ads. Yeah,
and we won't do that. And so the less involved we are with that corporation, the better. It's just, unfortunately, this is the platform that everybody is watching right now.
Well, and speaking of ads, I had this strange thought. None of us like ads when we go to a movie or a TV show or anything, right? Mm-hmm. None of us do. But yet, how many people who start a YouTube channel immediately opt just for a few extra dollars a month to have ads on their channel? So,
right.
I don't know, just bleh. And it's always the same bloody ads over and over. They literally just mix it up.
Yeah. So we get buried a lot, and as far as search results and people coming back to find us. So again, the subscriptions and the likes and the views, that all helps us, because that's really make sure that this stuff is actually getting out to you guys.
And also, if you could share on your Facebook page or on any forums, any of our stuff, and please, we don't mind well-constructed critiques or complaints. We are not perfect. We are far from perfect. So please feel free to say whenever I'm wrong or something, and just, if you would, just help me correct, because I'm all the time, I keep running notes on my computer of everything. So any feedback like that, I honest to goodness welcome.
So thanks for watching. Stay tuned. We'll do another one of these probably either at the end of March or the beginning of April next month, if we can get more questions posted up there. And keep checking back later for new stuff coming up.
We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
See ya.